Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the UES Frontier, staring at the small screen that showed empty space ahead. The ship had been traveling for 3 weeks now, mapping new star systems at the edge of known space. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Lisa Carter from her station. She was the ship's chief engineer, a woman with short brown hair who could fix anything that broke. "There's a signal, coming from the Gamma 7 system." Jake turned his chair to face her. "What kind of signal?" "It's a distress beacon, but it's really old. The pattern suggests it's been broadcasting for maybe 30 or 40 years. Dr. Ben Hughes looked up from his medical reports. He was a tall man with kind eyes who served as the ship's doctor. 30 years? That's before we even joined the Galactic Council. Jake felt his heart beat a little faster. A distress signal. That old meant someone had been waiting for help for a very long time. "Can you tell what species sent it?" Lisa worked at her controls for a few minutes. "I can't make out the language, but the signal is definitely artificial. Someone built that beacon." "Sir," said Communications Officer Amy Stone, "Earth Command hasn't authorized us to investigate unknown signals. Our orders are to map systems and return home." Jake knew she was right. The Galactic Council had strict rules about first contact with new species. Only approved diplomatic ships were supposed to make contact. But something about the signal bothered him. Someone had been calling for help for 30 years and no one had answered. "How far to the Gamma 7 system?" he asked. 2 days at maximum. Speed," Lisa replied. Jake thought for a moment. His orders were clear, but his conscience was clearer. "Change course for Gamma 7. We're going to take a look." Amy frowned. "Captain, if Earth Command finds out we disobeyed orders..." "They can. Court-martial me later," Jake said. "I'm not going to ignore someone who needs help." The next 2 days passed slowly. The crew worked quietly, but everyone knew they were doing something that could get them in serious trouble. Jake spent most of his time thinking about what they might find. Were they flying toward a rescue mission or a trap? When they dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Gamma 7 system, they found their answer. On the main screen appeared a sight that made everyone on the bridge go quiet. A massive space station hung in orbit around a dead planet. The station was clearly very old and looked like it had been beautiful once. Now parts of it were dark, and Jake could see holes in the outer hull. The station was dying. "Life signs?" Jake asked. Ben checked his sensors. "Yes, but not many. Maybe 300 or 400 people. The readings are strange, though. Not human, and not any species in our databases." "The distress signal is coming from that station," Lisa confirmed. "It's much stronger now that we're close." Jake stared at the dying station. Somewhere inside were hundreds of people who had been calling for help for 30 years. No one had come. No one had cared. The thought made him angry. "Open a channel," he ordered. Amy worked at her controls. "Channel open, sir. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth ship UES Frontier. We received your distress signal. Do you need assistance?" For a long moment there was only silence. Then a voice came through the speakers, speaking in accented but clear English. "This is Elder HFY of the Zalari people. You actually came. After all these years, someone actually came." The voice sounded old and tired, but Jake could hear surprise and hope in it. "We're here to help. What's your situation?" "Our station is failing. Our people are dying. We have been forgotten by the galaxy for so long that we thought no one would ever answer our calls." Jake felt his jaw tighten. "Well, we're answering now. Can we dock with your station?" Yes, of course. Docking Bay 7 is still working, but why did you come? No one has helped us before." "Because you asked for help," Jake said simply. "And that's enough." An hour later, Jake walked through the airlock into the Zalari station with Lisa and Ben beside him. The corridor they entered was clean but clearly old. The walls were made of some kind of metal that seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. Waiting for them was an alien unlike any they had seen before. Elder HFY was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. He wore simple robes, that had once been fine but were now worn and patched. Despite his alien appearance, his expression was unmistakably one of relief and gratitude. "Welcome to Haven Station," Kethva said, bowing slightly. "I am sorry you must see us like this, in our time of decline." "There's nothing to apologize for," Jake replied. "Tell us what you need." As they walked through the station, Kethva explained the situation. The Zalari had once been a proud and advanced people, but they had been exiled from their homeworld. Over 60 years ago, they had built this station as their new home, but time and isolation had taken their toll. "Our life support systems are failing," Kethva said as they passed through corridors where the air felt thin and stale. "Our population has been declining for decades. We are less than 400 now, down from over 10,000 when we first arrived here." They entered a large chamber where dozens of Zalari sat or lay on simple beds. Many looked sick or weak. Jake noticed that most of them were old. There were very few children. "The other species in the galaxy," Kethva continued, "they have forgotten us. Some choose to forget. We sent messages to every world we knew, begging for trade, for medicine, for any kind of contact. No one ever replied." Ben knelt beside one of the sick Zalari and began examining her with his medical scanner. "Their physiology is similar to humans in some ways," he said quietly to Jake. "I think I can help them." Lisa was looking at a control panel on the wall. "This is incredible technology, but it's breaking down. I can see at least a dozen systems that need repair." Jake turned to Kethva. "Why were you exiled from your homeworld?" The old alien's face grew sad. "We discovered something about the Galactic Council that they did not want known. When we tried to share this knowledge, we were branded as troublemakers and traitors. Our own people turned against us to save themselves from the Council's anger." "What did you discover?" "That is a story for another time," Kethva said. "For now it is enough that you are here. In all the years we have been calling for help, you are the first to answer. What makes humans different from the others?" Jake thought about the question. He looked at Lisa, who was already working on the broken control panel, and at Ben, who was gently treating sick aliens he had never seen before. What made humans different? "Maybe we're just too stubborn to ignore someone who needs help," he said. Kethva smiled, an expression that looked strange on his alien features but was unmistakably warm. "Then perhaps there is hope for us yet." As Jake looked around at the dying station and its forgotten people, he knew that his mission had changed. Earth Command might be angry, but he couldn't walk away from this. The Zalari had been forgotten by everyone else in the galaxy, but they wouldn't be forgotten by the humans. Jake Morrison stood in the main meeting room of Haven Station 3 days later, watching his crew work alongside the Zalari. It was amazing how quickly the two species had learned to work together. Lisa was teaching a young Zalari named Vexna how to repair the old power systems, while Ben had set up a medical station in the lower levels. "The main problem is the life support," Lisa explained to Jake as she wiped grease from her hands. "Their systems are completely different from ours, but I think I can build a bridge between our technology and theirs." "How long will that take?" Jake asked. "Maybe 2 weeks if everything goes right, but Captain, I'm going to need parts from our ship. And I mean a lot of parts." Jake nodded. He had expected this. "Do whatever you need to do." Across the room, Dr. Ben Hughes was talking quietly with Elder Kethva. The old Zalari looked much better than he had 3 days ago. Ben's medicines were working, and hope was a powerful healing force. "Captain Morrison," Kethva said as Jake approached, "Dr. Hughes has been telling me about human medicine. It is quite different from our own methods." "Different how?" Jake asked. Ben smiled. "The Zalari approach healing from a completely different angle than we do. They focus on helping the body heal itself, rather than fighting the disease directly. It's actually pretty brilliant." "Our healers were once the finest in the galaxy," Kethva said sadly. "But most of our knowledge died with our elders. We have been isolated for so long that we lost much of what made us great." Jake felt anger rising in his chest again. These people had so much to offer, but they had been thrown away and forgotten. "Tell me about your exile. What really happened?" Kethva looked around the room, then gestured for Jake to follow him. They walked to a smaller chamber where they could speak privately. The old alien sat down heavily in a chair that looked like it had been beautiful once but was now worn and patched. 60 years ago, our scientists made a discovery, Kethva began. We learned that the Galactic Council was not what it pretended to be. The Council told everyone that they kept peace between the species, that they protected the weak and guided the strong. But we found the truth, which was, the Council keeps power by making sure no species ever becomes strong enough to challenge them. They watch every world, every people. When a species becomes too advanced, too independent, too questioning, the Council finds ways to weaken them. Jake leaned forward. How? Many ways. Sometimes they create wars between species. Sometimes they spread diseases. Sometimes they simply cut off trade and resources until a world dies slowly. Kethva's voice grew bitter. They make examples of troublemakers. They make sure everyone knows what happens to those who ask too many questions. And you asked questions. We tried to warn the other species. We had proof of what the Council was doing, but when we presented our evidence, the Council branded us as liars and traitors. They told our own people that we were dangerous, that association with us would bring punishment. Jake felt sick. So your own people turned against you? Most did. A few thousand of us refused to back down, refused to stay silent. So we were exiled. The Council told everyone that we were terrorists, that we had tried to destroy the peace of the galaxy. Kethva looked at his hands. For 60 years, we have been a warning to others. Look what happens to those who oppose the Council. What? About the distress signal? Why didn't anyone respond? The Council made sure that no one would help us. They spread word that we were dangerous, that contact with us was forbidden, and other species, they were afraid. Better to ignore us than risk the Council's anger. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. Humans aren't part of your political system yet. We're too new to the galaxy. Yes, that is probably why you were able to help us. The Council has not yet decided how to control your people. They can try, Jake said grimly. Just then, Amy Stone's voice came over the station's communication system. Captain Morrison, please report to the communications center immediately. We have an urgent message from Earth Command. Jake's stomach dropped. He had been expecting this call, but he had hoped for more time. I have to go, he told Kethva. You are in trouble because of us, the old alien said. No, Jake replied firmly. I'm in trouble because I did the right thing. The communications center was small, with screens showing star charts and signal patterns. Amy looked worried as Jake entered. Sir, Admiral Clark is on the line. He sounds very angry. Jake nodded and sat down at the communications station. Put him through. The screen flickered, then showed the stern face of Admiral Robert Clark, head of Earth Fleet Command. He was an older man with gray hair and cold eyes. Morrison, what the hell do you think you're doing? Clark's voice was sharp with anger. I'm helping people who need help, sir. You're violating direct orders and endangering human relations with the Galactic Council. I have 3 Council ships demanding to know why a human vessel is in unauthorized space. Jake felt his jaw tighten. There are dying people here, Admiral. People who have been forgotten and left to die. That's not our problem, Captain. Our problem is maintaining good relations with the established galactic government. The Council has made it clear that contact with these Zalari is forbidden. Why? That's not your concern. Your concern is following orders. You will return to Earth immediately and face disciplinary action. Jake looked at the screen for a moment, thinking about Elder Kethva and the sick Zalari in the medical bay. He thought about Lisa working to repair their failing systems and Ben treating people who had suffered alone for decades. No, sir. Admiral Clark's face went red. What did you say? I said no. I'm not abandoning these people. Morrison, you're finished. I'm relieving you of command and ordering your crew to arrest you. Jake turned to look at Amy, Lisa, and Ben, who had all gathered in the communications center. They looked back at him with serious expressions. Actually, sir, Lisa said, stepping forward, we're all staying. "This is mutiny," Clark shouted. "No," Jake replied calmly. "This is humanity." He reached over and cut the communication link. The screen went dark, leaving the 4 humans standing in silence. "Well," Ben said finally, "that went better than I expected." Amy laughed nervously. "Captain, we're all going to be court-martialed for this." "Probably," Jake agreed. "Anyone want to change their mind?" Lisa shook her head. "These people have been calling for help for 30 years. Someone finally answered. "I'm not walking away now." "The Galactic Council is going to be very angry," Ben added, "but I've seen what they let happen to the Zalari. If that's the kind of peace they keep, maybe it's time someone stood up to them." Jake felt proud of his crew. This was what made humans different, he thought. Other species followed rules and obeyed authority even when it meant letting people die. But humans had something else. They had the ability to say no when the rules were wrong. "Okay then," Jake said. "We're officially rogue. Amy, send a message to every ship in communication range. Tell them about the Zalari. Tell them what the Council has done to these people." "Sir, that could start a war." "Maybe. Or maybe it could start something better." Jake looked around at his crew. The Zalari have been forgotten by everyone else. But they haven't been forgotten by us. And if we're loud enough, maybe other people will remember them too. As Amy began transmitting their message across the galaxy, Jake wondered what they had just started. But looking at the hope in his crew's eyes, he knew they had made the right choice. The Zalari would not be forgotten anymore. 2 weeks had passed since Jake Morrison cut the communication link with Admiral Clark. The work on Haven Station had been going better than anyone expected. Lisa Carter stood in the main engineering section, watching as her hybrid power system came online for the first time. "Power levels are stable," announced Vexna, the young Zalari who had become Lisa's assistant. He was learning human engineering methods faster than Lisa thought possible. "The fusion core is running at 80% efficiency. Not bad for a first try," Lisa said with a smile. She had combined human fusion technology with Zalari energy crystals to create something neither species could have built alone. The result was a power system that was more efficient than anything she had seen before. Across the station, Dr. Ben Hughes was making his own discoveries. He stood in his medical bay, looking at test results that amazed him. The Zalari patient, lying on the bed in front of him, was an elderly female named Tha Lin, who had been dying of organ failure just 10 days ago. "How do you feel?" Ben asked her. "Strong," Tha Lin replied in her careful English. "Stronger than I have felt in years. Your medicine and our healing methods work well together." Ben nodded. It was incredible. Human medical techniques focused on fighting disease aggressively, while Zalari methods helped the body heal naturally. When combined, the two approaches could cure things that neither could handle alone. "Dr. Hughes," said another Zalari, approaching with excitement. "Elder Kethva wishes to speak with you. He says it is urgent." Ben found Kethva in the station's archive chamber, surrounded by glowing data crystals. The old Zalari looked more energetic than Ben had ever seen him. "Doctor, your Captain Morrison asked me to tell him everything about the Galactic Council," Kethva said. "I think it is time you all knew the full truth." Jake arrived a few minutes later with Lisa and Amy. The 4 humans gathered around Kethva as he activated one of the data crystals. A holographic display appeared showing star charts and population data. 60 years ago, we were scientists," Kethva began. "We studied the patterns of galactic civilization. What we found was disturbing. The display showed dozens of star systems with dates and population numbers. Jake noticed that many of the systems showed sharp population drops over the years. Every few decades, the Council would identify species that were becoming too independent," Kethva continued. "Look at the Vorthak people. 50 years ago, they had a population of 12 billion and were developing new space travel technology." The display zoomed in on one system. The population counter showed the number dropping from 12 billion to 3 billion over a period of just 5 years. "What happened to them?" Amy asked. "The Council introduced a plague. They called it a natural disaster, offered medical aid that barely helped, and watched the Vorthak civilization collapse." The survivors were grateful to the Council for any help they received. Ben felt sick. They murdered 9 billion people? And made the survivors love them for it, HFY said bitterly. This is how the Council works. They break species down, then offer just enough help to seem like saviors. The display changed to show other examples. Species that had been weakened by carefully started wars. Worlds that had been cut off from trade until their economies collapsed. Civilizations that had been divided against themselves by Council manipulation. The hegemony serves as the Council's military arm, HFY explained. They are the ones who enforce the Council's will. Any species that grows too strong or asks too many questions faces the same fate. Jake stared at the data, feeling anger build in his chest. How many species have they destroyed in the past century? 47 civilizations have been eliminated or reduced to helpless dependency. Hundreds of others have been weakened to keep them under control. Lisa looked at the population numbers with horror. That's genocide on a massive scale. Yes, and every species in the galaxy knows it. Even if they do not speak of it, they obey the Council out of fear, hoping that if they stay quiet and follow orders, they will be left alone. But you didn't stay quiet, Jake said. No. We tried to warn others, tried to organize resistance. But fear is a powerful weapon. Most species chose to sacrifice us rather than risk the Council's anger. Amy studied the star charts. Captain, if this is true, then humans are walking into a trap. The Council is probably already deciding how to deal with Earth. Jake knew she was right. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 5 years ago. They were still considered newcomers, still learning the rules. But if the Council saw them as a threat, there's something else, HFY said, activating another crystal. Something that might give you hope. The new display showed communication records. Hundreds of them, scattered across the galaxy. What are these? Jake asked. Responses to your message, HFY said with the first smile Jake had seen from him. The transmission your communications officer sent 2 weeks ago has reached many systems, and people are responding. Amy leaned forward to read the messages. Her eyes grew wide. Captain, these are from all over the galaxy. Different species, different worlds. What are they saying? They're saying they remember their own forgotten people. Species that were written off as extinct, colonies that were abandoned, refugees who were ignored. Amy's voice grew excited. Sir, there are survivors everywhere. People who have been hiding, waiting, hoping. Jake read over her shoulder. Messages from the Kethtar, a species that had supposedly died out 20 years ago but had actually been hiding in asteroid fields. Communications from human-like beings called the Terran Remnant, descendants of an Earth colony ship that had been lost centuries ago. Signals from dozens of other forgotten peoples. They have been listening to the galaxy's communications for years, HFY explained. Watching, waiting, hoping that someday someone would speak for the forgotten. Your message gave them that hope. Lisa was studying the technical data included in some of the messages. Captain, look at this. Some of these hidden species have been developing incredible technology. They've had to in order to survive while staying hidden. The Council's greatest fear, HFY said, is that the forgotten peoples might unite. Separately, each group is weak and helpless. But together they might be stronger than the Council, Jake finished. Ben looked at the medical data and some of the transmissions. Some of these species have found cures for diseases the Council claimed were incurable. Others have developed life extension techniques. They've been sharing knowledge in secret. Jake felt something he hadn't felt in weeks: hope. The Council had spent decades crushing anyone who opposed them, but their very success had created something they couldn't control. A network of survivors, hidden peoples, forgotten races who had learned to live in the shadows. There's more, Amy said, reading deeper into the messages. Some of these groups want to meet. They're suggesting a gathering, a chance for the forgotten peoples to come together for the first time in decades. Where? Jake asked. Here, HFY said simply. They want to come to Haven Station. You and your people have become a symbol, Captain Morrison. You answered a call for help that had been ignored for 30 years. You proved that not everyone in the galaxy has forgotten how to care about others. Jake looked around at his crew. Lisa had oil stains on her uniform from working on Zilari machinery. Ben had dark circles under his eyes from treating patients around the clock. Amy had been sending and receiving messages for days without rest. They all looked exhausted, but they also looked determined. If we do this, Jake said slowly, we'll be starting something that can't be stopped. The council won't ignore a gathering of forgotten peoples. No, Kethva agreed. They will come to destroy us all. Then we better be ready for them, Lisa said. Jake nodded. They had come here to answer a distress call. Now they were about to start a revolution. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Haven Station, watching the last of the refugee ships dock. In the 3 weeks since Amy had sent out their message, over 50 vessels had arrived. Each one carried survivors from species the galaxy had forgotten. The station was more crowded than it had been in decades, but the energy was incredible. Beings from across the galaxy worked together, sharing knowledge and resources. The Kethtar had brought advanced shield technology. The Terran remnant contributed weapons systems that Earth had never seen. Other species offered medical advances, engineering solutions, and tactical knowledge. Captain, Amy called from behind him. Long-range sensors are picking up something big. Jake turned and followed her to the command center that had been hastily set up in the station's main hall. Lisa was there with Elder Kethva and Commander Sarah Hill of the Terran Remnant, a tough woman who looked remarkably like a human, but spoke with an accent Jake couldn't place. "Show me," Jake said. The main display lit up with sensor readings. Even Jake, who wasn't an expert on space combat, could see that what was coming toward them was massive. 47 ships, Lisa reported, led by a hegemony dreadnought. They'll be here in 6 hours. Admiral Zexmore commands that fleet, said Kethva quietly. He is the Council's most ruthless enforcer. He has destroyed entire worlds. Commander Hill studied the tactical display with experienced eyes. We have 31 ships total. Most are old, some are barely armed. Against a hegemony fleet. She shook her head. We can't win a straight fight, Jake agreed. So we don't. Fight straight. What do you mean? Amy asked. Jake pointed to the station's schematic on another screen. Haven Station was built to be a home, not a fortress. But Lisa's been modifying it for weeks. What do we have? Lisa smiled grimly. Hybrid shield generators that are stronger than anything the Council has seen. Power systems that can overload, to create some nasty surprises, and about 100 modifications that aren't in any Council database. The refugee ships are also full of surprises, Commander Hill added. Technologies the Council thinks are lost or impossible. We might not be able to win, but we can make them pay for every meter. Dr. Ben Hughes entered the command center, his medical coat stained with exhaustion. Captain, I've been talking to the healers from the other species. We have a plan. What kind of plan? The kind that might save lives instead of just taking them. Ben activated a data pad. Every species here has been hiding for decades. They've learned to survive in impossible conditions. The Vorthak survivors developed a way to put their people into deep hibernation during emergencies. The Kethtar can phase shift their ships to avoid detection. Jake began to understand. You want to save the people, not just fight the battle. Exactly. If we can evacuate most of the refugees during the fighting, then even if we lose, the forgotten people survive. And go where? Amy asked. Commander Hill spoke up. The Terran remnant has hidden bases throughout this sector. We've been preparing for something like this for 50 years. We can hide them all. Jake looked around the room at the faces of people from a dozen different species. They had come together because of a simple human decision to answer a distress call. Now they were planning to face the most powerful military force in the galaxy. How long do we have? He asked. 5 hours and 43 minutes, Lisa replied. Then, let's get to work. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The station's docking bays were filled with ships being loaded with refugees. Children and elderly beings from a dozen species were helped aboard vessels that would take them to safety. The strongest stayed behind to fight. Jake found himself in the station's armory with Lisa and a group of Zalari engineers. They were working on something that looked like a cross between a torpedo and a communications array. "What is it?" Jake asked. "Insurance," Lisa replied. "If we're going to fight the Council, the whole galaxy needs to know why." She showed him the device's components. Half of it was a standard data transmission package. The other half was designed to punch through any jamming the Council ships might use. "Everything we've learned about the Council's crimes is in there," Lisa explained. "Kethva's evidence, testimony from the refugees, proof of what they've done to dozens of species. If we can get this broadcast to the major worlds..." "The Council can't cover it up anymore," Jake finished. "Exactly. Even if they destroy us, the truth will survive." 3 hours later, Jake stood in Haven Station's main command center watching the Council fleet approach. The refugee evacuation was almost complete. Most of the children and non-combatants were safely away, but nearly 2,000 beings had chosen to stay and fight. "Incoming transmission," Amy announced. The main screen showed the face of Admiral Zexmore, the hegemony commander. He was a tall, pale being with cold eyes and ceremonial scars covering his face. When he spoke, his voice was like ice. "Human vessel, you will surrender immediately. You and your companions will be taken into custody for violation of Council law." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison. We're not surrendering to murderers." Zexmore's expression didn't change. "You have 30 seconds to comply, or we will destroy your station and everyone aboard it." "Admiral," Jake said calmly, "let me tell you something about humans. We don't surrender to bullies." He nodded to Amy, who cut the transmission. "All ships, this is Morrison," Jake announced on the fleet-wide channel. "They want to destroy us because we dared to help people they had forgotten. They want to kill us because we proved that their system of fear doesn't work on everyone." Around the station, the mixed fleet of refugee ships and the lone Earth vessel UES Frontier began to move into defensive positions. "Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for every species that has been crushed under the Council's boot. We fight for the idea that helping others is never wrong. We fight because someone has to." The first Council missiles launched just as Jake finished speaking. The battle for Haven Station had begun. The station's hybrid shields flared to life, absorbing the initial barrage with strength that surprised the Council forces. The refugee ships, small and outdated, darted between the massive Council vessels, like angry insects, their unusual weapons and tactics confusing the enemy. "Lisa, get that transmission ready," Jake ordered as the station shook under enemy fire. "Working on it," Lisa replied, her hands flying over unfamiliar Zalari controls. On the tactical display, Jake watched as 3 Council ships moved to surround the station. The refugee fleet was fighting bravely, but they were being overwhelmed. "Captain," Commander Hill's voice came over the communication system. "My ship is heavily damaged. We can't hold them much longer. Ben, how's the evacuation? Last transport is away. Everyone who wanted to leave is safe." Jake nodded. They had saved the people. Now came the hard part. "Amy, open a channel to the entire galaxy." "Sir? If we're going to make a stand, everyone should see it." As the battle raged around Haven Station, Amy began broadcasting on every frequency she could reach. The signal carried the image of a small space station, surrounded by the forgotten peoples of the galaxy, standing against the most powerful fleet in known space. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth," Jake announced to the galaxy. "We came here to answer a distress call. We found people who had been abandoned and forgotten. Today, those people fight for their right to exist." The Council fleet pressed their attack, but something unexpected was happening. The hybrid technologies developed by the forgotten peoples were proving surprisingly effective. Kethtar ships phased through solid matter to attack from impossible angles. Vorthak vessels absorbed energy weapons and redirected them. Human tactics, combined with alien technologies, created chaos in the Council fleet's formations. "Now, Lisa," Jake ordered. Lisa launched the data torpedo toward the edge of the system. The small device accelerated past the fighting ships, its powerful transmitter already beginning to broadcast the truth about the Council's crimes to every world within 100 light years. As the torpedo disappeared into hyperspace, Jake smiled. Win or lose, the galaxy would finally know the truth. The battle for Haven Station was far from over, but the war for the galaxy's future had just begun. The battle had been raging for 2 hours when everything changed. Jake Morrison watched from Haven Station's command center as new ships began dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. At first, he thought more Council reinforcements had arrived, but Amy's excited voice told him otherwise. "Captain, those aren't Council ships," she announced. "I'm getting identification signals from the Kalani Republic, the Thorian Federation, and at least a dozen other major worlds." On the main screen, Jake could see Admiral Zexmore's fleet beginning to pull back as more and more ships arrived. These weren't the small refugee vessels that had been fighting alongside Haven Station. These were full military fleets from established galactic powers. "How many?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her sensors. "Over 300 ships and more arriving every minute. Sir, it looks like half the galaxy is coming here." Elder Kethva, who had been coordinating the defense from his position near the communications array, turned to Jake with wonder in his ancient eyes. "Your data transmission," he said. "It has reached the major worlds. They have seen the evidence." "Doctor," Ben Hughes rushed into the command center, his face flushed with excitement. "Captain, I'm getting medical data transmissions from the new arrivals. They're sharing information about Council biological weapons, forced plagues, everything. Species across the galaxy are admitting what was done to them." Jake felt his heart racing. The truth about the Council's crimes was spreading faster than anyone had expected. World after world was responding, not just with words, but with action. "Incoming transmission," Amy announced. "It's from the Kalani flagship." The screen showed a being Jake recognized from diplomatic files. Admiral Thonra of the Kalani Republic was a respected leader known for his careful neutrality in galactic affairs. His species looked somewhat like tall, gray-skinned humans with large eyes and elongated skulls. "Captain Morrison," Thonra said, his voice carrying across the communication channel. "We have reviewed the evidence you transmitted. The Kalani Republic formally withdraws its support from the Galactic Council and offers aid to the Haven Station Alliance." Before Jake could respond, more transmissions began coming in. The Thorian Federation announced they were sending medical supplies and engineers. The Altair Confederation offered military support. One by one, species that had been silent for decades began speaking out. Admiral Zexmore's voice cut through, the other communications sharp with anger and desperation. "All vessels, this is Admiral Zexmore of the Hegemony. You are interfering with a lawful Council operation. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." Admiral Thonra's response was calm but firm. "Admiral, we no longer recognize the Council's authority. The evidence shows systematic genocide and oppression. The Hegemony fleet will withdraw or be removed." What happened next surprised everyone. Instead of fighting, half of Zexmore's fleet began to surrender. Ship after ship powered down their weapons and sent messages asking for protection. Even within the Hegemony, the truth was spreading. "My sensors show power failures across their fleet," Lisa reported. "It looks like their own crews are refusing to fight." Jake watched in amazement as the mighty Council fleet fell apart. Some ships tried to escape, but they were surrounded by the growing Alliance fleet. Others surrendered completely. A few, including Zexmore's flagship, continued to broadcast threats, but they were clearly outnumbered. "Captain Morrison," came another transmission, this time from a Hegemony officer Jake didn't recognize. "This is Commander Rexna of the Cruiser Enforcer. We formally request permission to join your alliance. We have been forced to carry out Council orders for too long." More and more Council ships were switching sides. Jake realized that the Hegemony itself had been another victim of the Council's control. Their crews had been forced to commit terrible acts, and now they had a chance to refuse. "Ben," Jake said, "get medical teams ready to help anyone who needs it. Lisa, start coordinating with the new arrivals to set up supply lines. Amy, I want you to establish communication with every ship in the system." As his crew worked to manage the sudden influx of allies, Jake found himself thinking about how quickly everything had changed. 3 months ago, he had been a simple exploration captain following routine orders. Now he was apparently leading a galactic revolution. Elder HFY approached him with something Jake had never seen before: hope shining in the old alien's eyes. "Captain," HFY said quietly, "my people have been forgotten for 60 years. Today the galaxy remembers us. They remember all of us." "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now we build something new, something better." Over the next several hours, representatives from dozens of species gathered aboard Haven Station. The meeting hall that had once held a few hundred dying Zalari now hosted ambassadors, military leaders, scientists, and survivors from across the galaxy. Jake found himself at the center of discussions he felt completely unprepared for. These beings were planning the formation of a new galactic government, and they kept looking to him for guidance. "The humans showed us something we had forgotten," said Admiral Thonra as he addressed the assembled representatives. "They showed us that doing the right thing is more important than following orders." Commander Sarah Hill of the Terran Remnant nodded in agreement. "For 50 years my people survived by hiding. We forgot that sometimes you have to stand up and fight for what's right." A Vorthak survivor named Gethkor, whose people had lost 9 billion to a council-created plague, spoke next. "The humans proved that helping others doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong." Jake listened to speaker after speaker praise human courage and compassion. It made him uncomfortable. Humans weren't perfect, and he knew it. But maybe that was the point. Maybe being imperfect but still trying to do the right thing was exactly what the galaxy needed. Dr. Ben Hughes had been working with healers from dozens of species, and his report to the assembly was remarkable. "By combining our medical knowledge with techniques from the forgotten peoples, we can cure diseases that have plagued the galaxy for centuries." The council kept this knowledge divided to maintain control. Lisa presented similar findings about technology. "Every species here has developed incredible innovations while hiding or surviving oppression. If we share freely instead of hoarding knowledge, we can solve problems that seemed impossible." As the discussions continued, Jake realized what was happening. The galaxy was healing. Species that had been enemies were working together. Peoples who had been forgotten were finding their voices again. Knowledge that had been suppressed was being shared freely. 3 days later, Jake stood on the observation deck watching construction crews from a dozen species working together to rebuild and expand Haven Station. The old dying refuge was becoming the foundation for something new: the Free Galactic Alliance. Elder HFY joined him at the viewing window. The old Zalari looked younger somehow, as if hope had taken years off his life. "The council remnants are still out there," HFY said. "Some will never accept this change. Then we'll deal with them when the time comes," Jake replied. "But this time they'll be facing a united galaxy, not isolated victims." And it all started because one human ship answered a distress call. Jake smiled. Maybe that's what humans do best. We show up when people need help. Below them, workers from the former Hegemony fleet worked alongside Zalari engineers, while Kethtar technicians shared blueprints with human designers. Children from refugee families played together in the station's new parks, laughing in a dozen different languages. The Zalari had been forgotten by the galaxy for 60 years. But now, thanks to a simple human decision to help those in need, no one would ever be forgotten again. Jake thought about the message that had started it all, the old distress beacon that had been calling for help for 30 years. Sometimes, the most important thing you could do was simply answer when someone called for help. The galaxy had learned that lesson well.